Welcome to Lyra Echo Stories, where every story echoes emotions, memories, and hidden truths. Step in and feel the echo of every tale.
My name is Tori Hilton. I'm 23 years old. Your brother has real potential. You should learn a trade, my father said, while signing away $175,000 that had my name on it, money my grandparents had saved since the day I was born. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw a single plate across that kitchen. I picked up my backpack, walked out the front door with $340 to my name, and I never looked back. That was 5 years ago. Last Tuesday, my parents walked into my office on the 14th floor of a building in downtown Hartford. My mother's knees buckled. But not because of the corner office, not because of the 40 employees. It was the way I looked at her, the way you look at a stranger who wandered into the wrong room. But to understand what happened in that office, you need to know what happened at a kitchen table in Glastonbury, Connecticut 5 years before, and the one piece of paper my father never knew existed. Let me take you back to March of 2020, the week everything changed. I grew up in a colonial two-story on Hollister Way in Glastonbury, Connecticut. White shutters, a wraparound porch, a mailbox my father repainted every spring because appearances mattered more than anything in the Hilton household. From the outside, we looked like a catalog family. From the inside, we operated like a small dictatorship. And my father, Gerald Hilton, was the one holding the gavel. Dad was a regional manager for an insurance company in Hartford. 40-minute commute, briefcase, tie clip, firm handshake. He controlled every dollar that moved through our house. My mother, Diane, didn't have a credit card in her own name until she was 46 years old. That should tell you everything. The rules were never written down, but they didn't have to be. My brother Marcus, 3 years older, 6 inches taller, and the undisputed center of my father's universe, got the new laptop every fall, got driven to travel baseball tournaments in 3 states, got his own room when I was moved into the half-finished attic bedroom at 12 because Marcus needed space to focus. I got the dishes, the laundry, the quiet expectation to help Mom keep the house running while the men chased bigger things. I was good at drawing, really good. My art teacher, Mrs. Calloway, once told me I had the kind of spatial awareness that architecture firms recruit for. I brought home a portfolio and a letter from her recommending a summer program at RISD. Dad glanced at it for maybe 4 seconds. Drawing pictures isn't a career, Tori. It's a hobby. He set it on the counter and never mentioned it again. But the college fund? That was supposed to be different. My grandparents on my mom's side had started 2 UTMA accounts the year each of us was born. One for Marcus, one for me. $175,000 each, built up over 18 years of contributions and compound interest. My father announced it at Thanksgiving when I was 15, stood right at the head of the table, wine glass in hand, like he was giving a quarterly earnings report. Both of my kids have a full ride waiting for them, he said. $175 each. That's their future, and nobody touches it. The whole table clapped. Aunt Helen, Uncle Ray, the cousins, everyone. I remember looking at the wall in the living room afterward. Every single frame was Marcus. His Little League trophy, his Honor Society certificate, his homecoming photo. I had exactly one picture on that wall, tucked in the corner by the thermostat, a family Christmas photo from 2011 where half my face was blocked by my dad's shoulder. I remember thinking, even then, the money is the only thing that's actually equal. I was wrong. If there was one person in my life who made me feel like I wasn't invisible, it was my grandmother Eleanor. She'd been a seamstress for 40 years, ran a small alterations shop out of her garage in Wethersfield, until her hands got too stiff to hold the needle straight. She had this way of looking at you while you talked, like you were the only broadcast on television. No one else in my family did that. Not for me, anyway. Grandma Eleanor was the one who taught me to sketch. Not art school sketch, the practical kind. She'd lay a pattern on her cutting table and I'd trace it freehand while she pinned. "Your hands in your head, Tori," she used to say. "Nobody can repossess those." She died the spring I turned 16. Ovarian cancer, fast and merciless. My father didn't go to the funeral. Said he had a conflict, which in Gerald Hilton language meant he didn't think his wife's mother warranted a personal day. My mother stood at the casket alone. I stood next to her. Marcus didn't come either. He was at a fraternity mixer. A week before she passed, Grandma Eleanor pulled me close in her hospital room. Her voice was barely there, but her grip was iron. She said, "I put something aside for you. Not much, but it's yours. No one else's. A man named Richard Keene will find you when you're ready." I thought she was talking about jewelry. Or maybe a quilt she'd been working on. I was 16. I didn't know what a trust was. After the funeral, I found a small wooden box she'd left for me. Inside was her sewing kit, a measuring tape worn soft at the edges, and a folded piece of paper with a name and phone number. Richard Keene, Esquire. I tucked that paper into my wallet, behind my school ID, and I didn't think about it again, not for 2 years. Marcus came home from college the fall of my senior year, like a man who'd just discovered religion, except his gospel was money and his prophet was himself. He'd been at UConn for 3 years by then. His GPA was somewhere in the neighborhood of a 2.3, which I only knew because I'd overheard him arguing with the registrar's office over the phone one night. But to hear him tell it at the dinner table, he was networking, building a personal brand, and laying the groundwork for something big. My father ate it up like communion. One Saturday morning in early March, Marcus showed up at the house wearing a blazer I'd never seen before. Banana Republic, price tag still dangling from the inside seam, like he wanted someone to notice. He had a printout in a plastic binder, maybe 8 pages, double-spaced. He called it his business plan. I was in the kitchen washing the breakfast dishes when he sat down across from Dad at the table and started his pitch. He needed an MBA, he said. Top-tier program. Then seed capital for a startup after that. Something in digital consulting, whatever that meant. He'd done the numbers, he said. Total investment needed, roughly $175,000. I turned off the faucet. "Dad," Marcus said, leaning back in his chair with his ankle on his knee. "Let's be real. You've got 2 education funds sitting there. I need one. And Tori, what's she going to do with it? She draws pictures." He said it the way you'd describe a child's hobby. Not cruel exactly, just dismissive. Like I wasn't even in the room. Like I wasn't 12 feet away with dishwater running down my forearms. And my father, the man who'd stood at Thanksgiving and told the whole family each kid had 175,000 waiting, looked at Marcus's plastic binder business plan, nodded slowly and said, "You might be onto something." He didn't look at me, not once. They waited a whole week to tell me, though I suspect that had more to do with paperwork than courtesy. It was a Sunday morning. The kitchen smelled like coffee and toast, and the light came through the window over the sink in that flat, honest way that makes everything look a little too real. My father was sitting at the head of the table. Marcus was next to him, legs crossed, sipping from one of those oversized ceramic mugs Dad had bought from Restoration Hardware. $28 for a coffee cup, but God forbid I ask for a $10 set of colored pencils. "Sit down, Tori," my father said. I sat. He didn't ease into it. Gerald Hilton never eased into anything. "I've made a decision about the education accounts. Your brother needs the capital for his MBA. It's a real opportunity, and I'm not going to let it slip. I'm consolidating both funds under his name." Both funds. All $175,000. "Your brother has real potential," he continued, straightening a napkin like he was closing a business deal. "You should learn a trade. There's good money in it. Nothing wrong with that." I looked at my mother. Diane Hilton was standing by the sink, both hands on the edge of the counter, her back half turned. She was staring at the floor. Not at me. Not at Dad. At the tile, like she was trying to memorize the grout pattern. "Mom?" Nothing. Not a word. Not a glance. Just the sound of the refrigerator humming and my brother slurping coffee like this was any other Sunday. "Your mother agrees," my father said. And something between my mother and me died right there on that kitchen tile. No funeral. No flowers. Just silence. And the smell of burnt toast. I looked at my father. I looked at Marcus. And I said one word. "Okay." Then I pushed back my chair, stood up, and walked upstairs. That one word cost me $175,000. But what I did over the next 48 hours would be worth a great deal more. I didn't leave that night. I know that's what people expect. The dramatic exit, the slammed door, the car peeling out of the driveway while the soundtrack swells. That's not what happened. What happened was math. I had 2 final exams left. 2 days. If I walked out before graduation, I'd lose the only credential I had, a high school diploma. And without that, I wouldn't even qualify for community college admissions. So I sat in my attic bedroom and did the most practical thing I'd ever done. I opened my laptop, searched for room rentals in New Haven, and made a list. Monday, a P English exam. Aced it. Tuesday, a P art history. The easiest 3 hours of my life. I walked across the gym stage Wednesday afternoon in a navy cap and gown, shook the principal's hand, and took my diploma. No one from my family was in the audience. Gerald and Diane were at Marcus's college across the state. Some end-of-year event, a reception for graduating seniors. Marcus didn't even graduate that semester, but my parents didn't know that yet. I walked out the gymnasium doors into the June sun, and I didn't go home. I'd already packed the night before. 1 backpack, 3 changes of clothes, my laptop, a phone charger, Grandma Eleanor's wooden sewing box, and the folded paper with Richard Keene's number still tucked in my wallet. That was everything. My entire net worth, $340 in a savings account linked to a debit card with a cracked screen protector. I left a note on the kitchen table, the same oak table where my grandmother used to teach me to trace patterns, and where my father had signed away my future. I'm leaving. Please don't look for me. You already made your choice. I called an Uber, got in, watched the white shutters of Hollister Way disappear through the rear window. $340. A high school diploma. A dead grandmother's sewing box. And a phone number I'd never dialed. It wasn't much, but it was mine. New Haven in the summer is loud, humid, and completely indifferent to your problems, which, if you're 18 and running on adrenaline and spite, is exactly what you need. I found a room in a 3-bedroom apartment on Wally Avenue, $700 a month, shared bathroom, 2 roommates I'd never met. One was a nursing student named Bridget who worked overnights. The other was a guy named Darnell who played bass in a cover band and was never awake before noon. Nobody asked me why I was there. Nobody asked about my family. I liked that. I got a barista job at a coffee shop on Chapel Street within the first week. Minimum wage plus tips. I enrolled at Gateway Community College for the fall, graphic design program. The tuition was manageable, barely, if I picked up extra shifts. It was 2 weeks before my father called. Not to check on me, not to ask where I was sleeping, to scold me. His voicemail, because I didn't pick up, went like this. You're being dramatic, Tori. This is exactly the kind of behavior I'm talking about. Come home, and we'll look into a cosmetology program, something realistic. He left 3 more messages that month, each one shorter than the last, each one angrier. My mother called once late at night. She was whispering, which meant Dad was in the next room. Tori, sweetheart, I'm worried about you. Your father, he just wants what's best. Please come home. We can figure this out. Figure what out, Mom? He gave away my money. A pause. Then, your father knows best, honey. Just come home. I hung up. And I understood, with a clarity that felt like cold water, that my mother was never going to choose me. Not because she didn't love me, but because she'd spent 25 years letting Gerald Hilton make every decision in her life, and she didn't know how to stop. That was the night I deleted home from my contacts. Meanwhile, Marcus texted the family group chat, the one I hadn't left yet. A single message with a laughing emoji. Guess the artist couldn't handle the real world. I screenshot it, muted the chat, and went back to studying. On his Instagram that same week, a rooftop bar in Manhattan, a bottle of something expensive, the caption, MBA Life, paid for, every cent of it, with my $175,000. I closed the app and opened my textbook. 3 months in, I was running on 4 hours of sleep, black coffee, and a stubbornness I'd inherited from a woman who hemmed wedding dresses in a garage until her knuckles swelled shut. I was sitting on my bed one night, the bottom bunk, because Bridget had claimed the top before I moved in, going through my bag for a pen when my hand brushed the wooden box. Grandma Eleanor's sewing kit. I opened it the way you open something sacred, slow, careful, already knowing it's going to hurt. The measuring tape, the needles in their little felt case, and underneath, the folded paper. Richard Keene, Esquire. A phone number with a Wethersfield area code. I'd been carrying it for 2 years. I'd never called. It had always felt like something for later, for some vague future emergency I couldn't picture. But sitting on that bunk bed, with $214 left in my account and a tuition bill due in 6 weeks, I realized this was the emergency. I called the next morning. Richard Keene answered on the second ring. His voice was calm and unhurried, the kind of voice you develop after 40 years of reading legal documents to grieving families. He said he'd been trying to reach me. He'd mailed 2 letters to the house in Glastonbury over the past 2 years. I never got them, I said. A long pause on his end. I see. We both understood what that meant. Gerald had intercepted them. Richard asked me to come to his office in Wethersfield. I took 2 buses to get there. It was a small practice, just him and a paralegal, in a brick building with law books on every surface and a brass lamp on his desk that looked older than I was. He sat me down and explained what my grandmother had done. Eleanor had set up a revocable trust 4 years before she died. $12,000 funded from her personal savings. The sole beneficiary was me, Victoria Eleanor Hilton, and the trust was structured to transfer when I turned 18 and made contact with the trustee. Richard was that trustee. She told me you'd call eventually, he said. She just wasn't sure when. He slid a check across the desk. $12,000. And beside it, a copy of the trust document with my grandmother's signature at the bottom, thin, shaky, but deliberate. Every letter intentional. I held that piece of paper, and for the first time since I'd left Glastonbury, I cried. Not because of the money, because someone had planned for me. Someone had sat down with a lawyer and said, "This is for Tori, and nobody else gets to touch it." But Richard wasn't done. "There's something else you should know," he said. He opened a folder. "Your UTMA account, the $175,000. I took the liberty of requesting the transaction records. As beneficiary, you're entitled to them." He turned the folder toward me. Inside was a printout, an email from Gerald J. Hilton to the bank, dated March 14th, instructing a full withdrawal and transfer of the custodial funds to a new account in Marcus Hilton's name. The email was 4 sentences long. No mention of my education. No mention of me at all, except as an account number. Under Connecticut law, Richard explained, a UTMA custodian has a fiduciary duty to use the assets for the benefit of the minor. That's you. What your father did isn't just unfair, Tori. It's a breach of that duty. You have legal standing to pursue recovery. My stomach dropped. So I can get it back? Richard was honest. You can file, but your father would need to have the assets to return, and litigation takes time and money you may not have. I can't make you any promises. I sat there for a long time, staring at that email printout. My father's name, the date, the amount, cold, transactional, like transferring inventory between warehouses. And then I folded the printout, put it in the envelope with the trust check, and said, "I'm not going to sue him." Richard raised an eyebrow. "I don't want his money anymore," I said. "I want my own." He nodded slowly, the way someone does when they respect a decision they might not have made themselves. "The statute of limitations on a UTMA breach in Connecticut is 6 years, he said. "If you change your mind, the door stays open." I thanked him. I took the check, the trust document, and the email printout. I walked to the bus stop in the rain, holding a manila envelope against my chest. $12,000. In Connecticut, that's barely 4 months of rent. But it was the first money in my life that someone gave me because they believed in me, not because they were obligated to. I want to be honest about what those first 2 years looked like, because I think people imagine some kind of movie montage, inspirational music, time-lapse of the girl at the desk, everything golden and upward. It wasn't like that. It was unglamorous and exhausting, and there were weeks where the only thing that kept me going was the fear of proving my father right. I used the $12,000 strategically. Tuition at Gateway for a full year came to just under $4,000. I bought a refurbished iMac and a student license for Adobe Creative Suite. The rest I rationed like water in a desert, rent Gap's bus fare, the electric bill when Darnell forgot his share for the third month running. I graduated Gateway with a 3.94 GPA, top of the graphic design cohort. That earned me a transfer scholarship to the University of Hartford, not a full ride, but enough to cover 70% of tuition. I cobbled together the rest with a part-time campus job and freelance logo work I found on Upwork, $10 an hour, sometimes less. It was during my first semester at UHart that I walked into a studio internship interview and met Maggie Owens. Maggie was the creative director of a small interior design firm in Hartford, 12 employees, mostly residential clients, nothing flashy. She was about 40, with reading glasses permanently perched on her head and a habit of saying exactly what she thought, which in a world full of Gerald Hiltons was the most refreshing thing I'd ever encountered. She flipped through my portfolio in silence for what felt like 10 minutes. Then she looked up and said, "Who trained you?" "My grandmother, and YouTube." She almost smiled. "Your spatial work is raw, but it's exceptional. I don't say that often." She offered me the internship, 20 hours a week, $12 an hour, starting Monday. I said yes before she finished the sentence. And somewhere on the other side of the state, my brother Marcus, funded by my $175,000, was living a very different version of potential. I wasn't checking his social media anymore, not deliberately. But Bridget followed some mutual acquaintance, and things filtered through. Marcus had dropped his MBA program after 1 year, just quit, took the remaining funds and pivoted to a startup, some vague digital consulting thing that, as far as I could tell, consisted mostly of a WeWork hot desk and a LinkedIn profile full of buzzwords. He leased a BMW 3 Series, rented a shared apartment in Murray Hill, posted photos from rooftop bars with captions like, "Building the Empire, one connection at a time." My father, meanwhile, told anyone who'd listen, "My son is an entrepreneur in New York." Not once, according to Aunt Helen, who was my only remaining thread to that family, did anyone ask about me. Maggie said something to me at the end of that first month at the studio. We were cleaning up after a client presentation, rolling blueprints, stacking fabric samples. And she stopped, looked at me the way my grandmother used to, and said, "I don't know what you're running from, Tori, but whatever it is, keep running. You're going somewhere." She didn't know the half of it, but she saw enough. I need to pause here for a second. If you're watching this and you've ever been the one your family counted out, the one they looked past, the one whose dreams got filed under unrealistic, I want you to know something. I see you. And if this story is hitting close to home, take a second to subscribe. Not for me, for the version of yourself that needs to hear what happened next. Because what happened in year 3 changed everything. Now let me continue. By the start of year 3, I had something I'd never had before, a life that was entirely mine. I was 21. I'd transferred to UHart full-time, carrying a double load of coursework and working 20 hours a week at Maggie's studio. My apartment was a 400-square-foot studio in the Frog Hollow neighborhood. Nothing glamorous, but it had a window that faced east, and I'd pushed my drafting table against it so the morning light hit my work just right. The walls were covered in mood boards, fabric swatches, color studies. It looked like someone lived there who was building something, because someone was. That's when my father decided he needed me back. Not because he missed me, not because he'd reconsidered, because the Petersons, Jim and Carol, our next-door neighbors for 15 years, had started asking questions. "Where's Tori these days, Gerald? Haven't seen her at church in ages. Is she doing okay?" My father couldn't tolerate questions he didn't have polished answers to. A daughter who'd vanished was a crack in the facade, and Gerald Hilton did not do cracks. The call came through my mother, of course. Diane's voice was thin, rehearsed. "Your father would like you to come home for Thanksgiving. The Petersons are joining us this year, and some of your father's colleagues. It would mean a lot." Translation: Your absence is becoming inconvenient. "I appreciate the invitation, Mom, but I have plans." A shuffle on the line, then my father's voice, sharp and sudden. He'd been listening the entire time, probably standing right beside her with his arms crossed. "You're embarrassing this family, Tori. People are asking where you are. What am I supposed to tell them?" And there it was. Not "are you safe?" Not "how are you doing?" But what do I tell people? Tell them the truth, Dad. Don't be smart with me. I'm not coming home to be a prop in a family photo. You made a decision 2 years ago. I made mine. He hung up. The line went dead, and I stood there in my little studio apartment, my hand still against my ear, my heart hammering against my ribs. Not because I was scared, because for the first time I'd said no to Gerald Hilton, and the sky hadn't fallen. But my father wasn't done. Within a week, the damage control began. Gerald sent an email, a group message to every aunt, uncle, and cousin on the Hilton side, and the half of my mother's family that still deferred to him. The subject line was simply, "Family Update." I know the exact wording because my Aunt Helen forwarded it to me without comment, which was her quiet way of saying, "You should see this." It read, "Dear family, Diane and I want to address Tori's situation. As some of you may have noticed, Tori has chosen to distance herself from the family. We've made every effort to support her and keep the door open, but she has refused. She is going through a difficult period and has, frankly, some personal issues we'd rather not discuss in detail. We ask for your understanding and your prayers during this time." Personal issues, that's what he called it. Not "I took her college fund," not "I told her to learn a trade while I bankrolled her brother's lifestyle." Personal issues. The kind of vague, loaded language that lets people fill in whatever blank makes the storyteller look best. Drugs, mental illness, a boyfriend, a breakdown. Take your pick. The calls started within days. Cousin Rebecca texted, "Praying for you, girl." Uncle Ray left a voicemail about getting right with God. And Aunt Helen, the only one with the sense to dig, called me directly. "Honey, are you okay? Your dad says you're struggling." "Aunt Helen, I love you. But please ask Dad what happened to my college fund, and then decide who's struggling." She went quiet. I could hear her breathing, the way people breathe when they're recalculating everything they thought they knew. She asked Gerald. I know she did because she told me later. His response was, "That's between me and my children," which is what people say when the answer makes them look bad. After that, Aunt Helen stopped asking. Not because she didn't care, but because Gerald Hilton had spent decades building a family structure where questioning him was the same as betraying him. And most people choose comfort over confrontation. I couldn't fight on every front. I was 21, working and studying and barely keeping my head above water. I didn't have the energy to mount a public relations campaign against my own father. So I did what I'd been doing since I was 12. I put my head down and kept working. But I saved that email. I saved Helen's forward, with the timestamp and the full recipient list. I didn't know when I'd need it. I just knew that a man who rewrites history once will do it again, and next time, I wanted receipts. Marcus called on a Thursday night, 8 months after the Thanksgiving blow-up. It was the first time I'd heard his voice in 2.5 years. "Hey, sis?" Warm, casual, like he was calling to catch up over coffee, like nothing had happened. "Marcus, look, Dad told me about the whole Thanksgiving thing. I think you're overreacting a little. It was just money, you know? We're family. Families figure this stuff out. Just money. $175,000. My education, my future, my grandmother's legacy. Just money." It was $175,000, Marcus. My $175,000. Okay, sure, technically, but Dad did what he thought was best, and honestly, he paused and I could hear him shifting, probably leaning back on whatever couch he was sitting on. "I needed it more. You always land on your feet, Tori. You're scrappy like that." Scrappy. The word people use when they want to compliment your suffering while taking credit for causing it. I didn't respond. I let the silence sit there, heavy and unforgiving. His tone changed. The warmth drained out, replaced by something thinner, sharper. "Fine. Be like that. But I'm going to be straight with you. If you keep this whole grudge thing going and it gets back to Dad's people, if you start ruining his reputation over some bank account, I'll make sure everyone knows you left because you couldn't handle not being the favorite. I'll make sure that story sticks." There it was. The real Marcus. Not the charming big brother, not the family peacemaker. The same kid who'd sat at that kitchen table and said she draws pictures while I stood 12 feet away with dishwater on my arms. Marcus? I said, and my voice was so steady it surprised even me. I'm going to say this once. Don't call me again unless it's to apologize, with a check. And even then, call a lawyer first. I hung up. My hand was shaking, my face was not. That was the last time Marcus and I spoke. For exactly 2 years and 4 months. Until he showed up, with my parents, at my office. The thing about building a life from nothing is that nothing keeps trying to remind you where you came from. End of year 3. I'd been running full speed for almost 30 months. Classes, the studio, freelance work on weekends, a budget so tight I could feel it creaking. And then, in the span of a single week, 2 things happened at once. First, my biggest freelance client, a boutique hotel group I'd been doing branding work for, froze their entire marketing budget. Contract canceled, effective immediately. That was $1,400 a month I'd been counting on. Second, the tuition bill for my final semester at UHart arrived. $4,200, due in 30 days. My scholarship covered the rest, but this chunk was mine to pay, and my savings account had exactly $611 in it. I sat in my car, Maggie's old Civic she'd let me borrow semi-permanently, in the parking lot of a CVS at 11 o'clock at night, and I did the math on the back of a receipt. Every way I ran the numbers, I came up short. If I didn't pay, I'd lose my final semester. No degree. 3 years of grinding reduced to a transcript that said incomplete. And for the first time since that kitchen table, for the first time in almost 3 years, I heard my father's voice in my head. Not a memory. Worse. A verdict. Maybe he was right. Maybe I wasn't built for this. Maybe the girl who draws pictures really didn't have real potential. Maybe I should have just gone home when he told me to, and enrolled in that cosmetology program, and married someone appropriate, and hosted Thanksgiving dinners for the Petersons until I turned into my mother. I picked up my phone, opened my contacts, scrolled to where home used to be, the entry I'd deleted 2 years ago. I could still remember the number. My thumb hovered over the keypad. Then I looked at the passenger seat. The wooden box was there. I kept it in the car, always, the way some people keep a rosary on the rearview mirror. My grandmother's sewing kit, the measuring tape, the empty space where Richard Keene's number used to be. Your hands and your head, Tori. Nobody can repossess those. I put the phone down. I didn't call. Instead, I called someone else. Maggie Owens picked up on the first ring. It was nearly midnight, and she answered like she'd been expecting the call, which, knowing Maggie, she probably had. She'd seen me getting thinner. She'd noticed the dark circles. She never said anything directly, because Maggie respected people too much to narrate their struggle back to them. But she watched. She always watched. Maggie, I'm sorry to call so late. I need to ask you something. Do you have any overflow projects? Anything at all? I'll take whatever you've got. I want to be clear about what I didn't say. I didn't say I need money. I didn't say please help me. I wasn't looking for charity. I was looking for work. There's a difference, and it matters. Maggie was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Actually, I've been meaning to talk to you. I'm leaving the firm. My stomach dropped. The one stable thing in my professional life, gone. I'm starting my own studio, she continued, residential and commercial design. I've been planning it for 6 months, and I need a junior designer, full-time, salaried. It pays enough to finish your degree, if that's something you're worried about. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel and closed my eyes. Not because I was breaking down, because for the first time in 3 years, the math worked. Maggie, why me? Because I saw your portfolio update last month. The Morrison project? That hotel lobby concept? She paused. Tori, that's not junior level work. That's principal level. You just don't know it yet. She didn't rescue me. She hired me. She made a business decision based on what she'd seen me produce for 2 years. I didn't get a handout. I got an offer, because I'd earned it. I started the following Monday. Design work during the day, Classes 3 evenings a week and Saturday mornings. 6 hours of sleep if I was lucky. It was the hardest year of my life. It was also the year everything turned. Aunt Helen called me on a Sunday in late October, year 4. She had a way of delivering bad news like a weather report. Factual, measured, with just enough warmth to let you know she cared. Marcus moved back home, she said. I was at my drafting table, sketching elevations for a restaurant project. I set my pencil down. His startup didn't make it, Helen continued. Whatever it was, I never did understand what he actually did. It's done. The BMW got repossessed last month. He's back in his old bedroom in Glastonbury. I didn't feel triumph. I want to be honest about that. What I felt was a strange hollow ache. The kind you get when something you predicted finally happens and you realize you'd been hoping you were wrong. And Dad? Helen sighed. Your father refinanced the house, pulled from his retirement savings, put another 30, maybe 40,000 into Marcus to get him back on his feet. Your mother started working, cashier at the Stop and Shop on Hebron Avenue. First job she's had since before you were born. My mother, Diane Hilton, scanning groceries at 51 years old because her husband had poured every dollar the family had into a son who couldn't hold a job, couldn't finish a degree, and couldn't tell the truth about either. Does Dad talk about me? I asked. I don't know why I asked. I think some part of you never stops being the kid at the kitchen table, looking at their father and hoping. No, honey, Helen said gently. He tells people Marcus is regrouping, that the market will turn. He doesn't mention you at all. I picked up my pencil and went back to work. While my father was watching his investment get towed out of the driveway, I was signing my first lease. Not for an apartment, for an office. I graduated from the University of Hartford on a Saturday afternoon in May, magna cum laude, Bachelor of Fine Arts in Design. The auditorium was full of families, mothers with flower bouquets, fathers holding up phones to record the walk, little siblings squirming in folding chairs. Mine was empty. My row in the guest section had 2 seats reserved under Hilton, both unclaimed. Maggie sat in the 3rd row. She wore a navy blazer and her reading glasses on her head, and when they called my name, Victoria Eleanor Hilton, magna cum laude, she stood up and clapped like she was trying to fill the silence that my family had left behind. It was enough. 6 months later, Maggie and I made it official. We'd been building toward it all year. Her client list was growing faster than she could manage alone, and the work I was producing had started attracting its own referrals. She sat me down in the studio one evening after the last employee left and said, I want your name on the door. Owens and Hilton Design Studio. She'd already had the partnership agreement drafted. 51% Maggie, 49% me. Fair, given that she brought the capital and the industry reputation. I brought my portfolio, my client relationships, and $8,000 I'd saved over the past 18 months. We signed in front of a notary on a Tuesday. Within 6 months, we'd outgrown the original studio, hired 3 employees, then 7, then 12. Maggie handled the high-end residential clients. I built out a consulting arm, corporate spaces, restaurant concepts, boutique hotels, under the name Hilton Creative Consulting, nested under our shared umbrella. The day I saw my last name on a glass door that I owned, not inherited, not borrowed, not given, I stood there for 5 full minutes, not to admire it, to believe it. Year 5. I was 23, and my life looked nothing like anything anyone in that house on Hollister Way had predicted for me. Owens and Hilton had moved into the Goodwin Building, a pre-war office tower in downtown Hartford, renovated top to bottom, the kind of address that makes people take you seriously before you've opened your mouth. We took the entire 14th floor, 40 employees, glass-walled offices, a design lab, a client presentation suite with a walnut table that seated 12. Our revenue had tripled in 18 months. We'd landed contracts with boutique hotel chains across New England, 2 restaurant groups, and a corporate campus redesigned for an insurance firm in Stamford. My corner office had a view of the Connecticut River. On the oak desk, solid, heavy, the kind of furniture you buy once and keep forever, sat 2 things: a framed photograph of my grandmother Eleanor, and the wooden sewing box, lid open, the measuring tape still coiled inside. No other family photos. Not one. Then, in early January, I received an email from the Hartford Business Journal. They were launching their annual 30 Under 30 Awards, recognizing young business leaders across the state. I'd been nominated. The gala ceremony was scheduled for March at the Connecticut Convention Center. 300 attendees, media coverage, the kind of visibility that my father would have killed for Marcus to have. I read the email 3 times, then I called Maggie. "You deserve this," she said. "Don't you dare turn it down." I didn't. I accepted, sent back the RSVP, and started drafting my speech. I planned to thank Maggie, to thank my professors at UHart and Gateway, and to thank the woman who gave me my first $12,000 and my first lesson in believing. What I didn't plan for, what I couldn't have predicted, was that the Hartford Business Journal publishes their nominee profiles online 2 weeks before the gala, with photographs and full names, and that Glastonbury, Connecticut, is only 22 miles from downtown Hartford. It was Bob Peterson who set the match. Bob, Jim and Carol's son, our old next-door neighbor, the kid who used to throw a football with Marcus in the backyard, had moved to Hartford after college and worked in commercial real estate. He saw the HBJ article the day it went live. He saw the name. He saw the photo. The professional headshot I'd had taken for the company website, blazer, clean background, the kind of image my father would have framed in the living room if it had belonged to Marcus. Bob didn't think twice. He forwarded the link to his mother, Carol, with a note. "Isn't this the Hilton's daughter? Small world." Carol Peterson texted Gerald that same evening. "Congratulations, Gerald. Saw Tori in the Hartford Business Journal. What a wonderful achievement. You must be so proud." I know what happened next because Aunt Helen told me, months later, piecing it together from what Diane had let slip. Gerald opened the link on the old iPad he kept on the kitchen counter. He read the article in silence. The profile detailed everything. Co-founder of Owens and Hilton, 40 employees, major clients, revenue growth, the 30 Under 30 nomination. There was a quote from Maggie calling me one of the most gifted spatial designers I've encountered in 20 years. Gerald didn't say congratulations. He didn't say he was proud. He said, to Diane, who was standing at the stove, "She got lucky. Design is a bubble. It won't last." But Diane, for the first time in 25 years, didn't nod along. "Gerald," she said quietly, "she built that without a penny from us." He didn't respond. He set the iPad down and left the room. Marcus was upstairs, in his old bedroom, at 26, surrounded by rejection emails and $60,000 in credit card debt. He saw the article that night on his phone. He read it twice. Then he walked downstairs and said the only honest thing I believe he said that year. "We should visit her. Maybe she can help." Gerald's first instinct was to refuse. He wasn't going to go begging at his daughter's office. The idea offended him on a structural level. In Gerald's world, children came to fathers, not the other way around. But Marcus knew which lever to pull. "Dad, think about it. If people find out your daughter is this successful and you're not even in contact, that looks worse. Way worse than anything Tori could say." He was right, and they both knew it. This wasn't about reconnection. It was about optics. Gerald needed to be seen as the patriarch of a family that included a successful daughter, not the man whose daughter had succeeded in spite of him. They agreed to drive to Hartford. No phone call first, no appointment, just a surprise visit, so Gerald could control the narrative. Walk in, shake hands, maybe get a photo for the living room wall, proof that the Hiltons were a united front. They left Glastonbury on a Tuesday morning in early March. Gerald, in his best suit, the navy one, 15 years old, slightly too tight across the shoulders. Marcus in wrinkled khakis, and a polo that had seen better days. Diane in the back seat, clutching her old handbag, eyes red before they'd even merged onto I-91. 3 people and a stack of Marcus's credit card statements. Headed to an office they'd never been invited to. That Tuesday morning, I was in early. 8 a.m. The 14th floor was quiet. Just me, the hum of the HVAC, and the pale March light coming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I had my speech for the gala open on my laptop, a draft I'd been tightening for 2 weeks. The ceremony was Saturday. 4 days away. I'd written and rewritten the middle section a dozen times, the part where I talked about my grandmother. I want to thank the woman who gave me my first investment, $12,000 in a sewing box, and taught me that real potential isn't something someone else decides for you. That line I'd nailed. It was the next part that kept tripping me up. How much to say, how close to the bone to cut without making it about him. I took a sip of coffee. Black, same as always, in a ceramic mug Maggie had custom made for the studio with our logo on the side. My blazer hung on the back of the chair. White linen, the nicest thing I owned, bought with my own money from a consignment shop in West Hartford. My grandmother's stud earrings, small gold knots, sat in my ears. They were the only jewelry I ever wore to the office. I looked out the window at the Hartford skyline, the gold dome of the state capitol, the river catching light, the rooftops of a city that owed me nothing and had given me everything anyway. I hadn't thought about my father in weeks, and that, I realized, was the real victory. Not the office, not the title, not the corner view. The fact that Gerald Hilton no longer occupied rent-free space in my head. Then the intercom buzzed. "Miss Hilton?" Janet's voice, careful and strange. "There are 3 people in the lobby. They don't have an appointment. They say they're family." My hand froze mid-page. 5 years. No calls, no letters, no apology. And they just showed up. I know you can feel what I felt in that moment. That buzz on the intercom. My whole body went cold. If you've ever had someone from your past show up right when you'd finally moved on, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Before I tell you what happened when that elevator door opened, smash that like button if you think I should have let them up, or drop boundary in the comments if you wouldn't have. Here's what I did. I sat with it for 10 seconds. 10 seconds of silence, my fingertips pressed against the edge of my speech, the intercom light blinking green on the desk phone. I could have said no. I could have told Janet to say I was in a meeting, that Ms. Hilton wasn't available. Please leave a card. Part of me wanted to. The 18-year-old in me, the girl at the kitchen table, she wanted to lock that door and never open it. But the 23-year-old, the one who'd built this floor from scratch, knew something the girl didn't. Running from them gave them power. Meeting them on my ground took it back. Send them up, Janet. I straightened my blazer, pulled my chair to the desk, opened a blank document on my laptop so the screen wasn't showing my speech, and I waited. The elevator opened with a soft chime that I could hear through the glass wall of my office. I didn't go out to meet them. I stayed exactly where I was. Janet walked them through the lobby, past the reception desk with its brass logo, Owens and Hilton, mounted on a slate gray wall. Past the open plan studio where 40 employees sat at their stations, iMacs, drafting tablets, sample boards propped against desks. The morning light was streaming in. The space hummed with competence. My father walked first. Navy suit, 15 years old. It pulled across his shoulders and bunched at the waist. His shoes were polished. He'd tried. But they were the same wingtips he'd worn to my cousin's wedding in 2017. Behind him, Marcus. Khakis wrinkled at the knee, a faded polo, hands in his pockets like a teenager called to the principal's office. And behind Marcus, my mother, Diane. Smaller than I remembered, clutching a Target handbag with both hands, eyes already red. They walked past 40 people who didn't know them, in a building with their daughter's name on the wall, through a space that existed because I'd refused to accept the life they'd chosen for me. Janet opened the door to the conference room. Glass walls, walnut table, 12 chairs, an 85-inch display screen, and a view of downtown Hartford that you could charge admission for. "Ms. Hilton will be with you shortly," she said. I gave it 2 minutes. Not to be petty, because I needed to breathe. Then I stood, picked up a legal pad and a pen, the Mont Blanc Maggie had given me the day we signed the partnership, and walked into the conference room. My mother saw me first. She made a sound, not a word, not a cry, something between the two, and her knees buckled, actually buckled. She grabbed the edge of the conference table with one hand, and Gerald's arm with the other. Gerald steadied her, but his face, I'll never forget his face. It was the look of a man who had walked into a building expecting to find a hobby and found an empire instead. Marcus just stared. At the logo, at the table, at me. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. Nothing came out. And I looked at all three of them with the exact expression I'd give a walk-in client who hadn't made an appointment. Professional, courteous, absolutely empty of anything personal. "Please," I said. "Sit down. Can I get you water or coffee?" They sat. Gerald at the head of the table, force of habit, then seemed to realize this wasn't his table and shifted awkwardly to the side. Diane took the chair closest to the door, like she might need an escape route. Marcus sat between them, arms crossed, eyes still scanning the room like he was appraising real estate. Nobody took the coffee. Gerald spoke first. Of course he did. "You've done well for yourself, Tori." He said it with a nod, a slow nod, the kind he used to give Marcus's report cards, like he was grading me. "I always said you were resourceful." Resourceful. Not talented, not brilliant. Resourceful. The word you use for someone who survives despite the odds you stacked against them. I let the silence sit for 3 full seconds, long enough for it to become uncomfortable. Then, "Thank you. Now, how can I help you today?" Gerald blinked. He'd expected warmth, maybe tears, maybe the prodigal daughter, grateful to see her family after 5 years. What he got was a conference room and a question he'd have to answer honestly. "We're here because we're family," he said, leaning forward, adjusting his cuffs like he was running a meeting. "We've let too much time pass. Your mother and I, we want to reconnect, put things behind us." Diane nodded, eyes wet, dabbing at them with a tissue she'd pulled from her handbag. I set my pen on the legal pad. I didn't write anything. "I appreciate you coming." Then Marcus cleared his throat. He uncrossed his arms, planted his elbows on the walnut table, this $12,000 walnut table, and tried on his old charm school voice. "Tori, I could actually use some advice. Business stuff. I've got a few things in the works and I thought maybe you could take a look. Give me your perspective." A few things in the works. $60,000 in credit card debt and an old bedroom in Glastonbury was a few things in the works. I looked at my brother the way Maggie looked at a design concept that didn't meet brief. "Marcus, are you a client?" He frowned. "What?" "If this is a business consultation, I'll have Janet schedule you. Our rate is $350 an hour." The room went very still. Gerald's jaw tightened. A vein I remembered from childhood, the one above his left temple, the one that appeared before he raised his voice, pulsed once. I placed a business card on the table between us. "Tori Hilton, co-founder, Owens and Hilton Design Studio. Phone number, email, no family crest, no shared history, just the facts." Gerald looked at the card. He didn't pick it up. "I'm happy to help," I said, "but I need to understand the capacity. Are you here as family or as a business inquiry? Because as family, we haven't spoken in 5 years." I paused. And that wasn't my choice. The mask came off. Gerald pushed back from the table, both hands flat on the walnut surface, and every year of carefully maintained composure cracked right down the center. "Enough with the corporate act, Tori. We're your parents. We drove 2 hours to see you." "You drove 2 hours," I said. "That's more effort than you made in 5 years." His face flushed. The vein was back, throbbing now. "I made a decision for this family. I did what I thought was right. I looked at 2 kids, and I put the money where it had the best chance of paying off. And look at you. You got over it. You're fine." Got over it. Like it was a cold, like $175,000 was a minor inconvenience I should have walked off like a stubbed toe. "You took $175,000 with my name on it," I said. My voice didn't waver. I'd practiced this sentence in my head for 5 years. Not for this moment, but for myself. For the version of me who needed to hear it spoken out loud. "You transferred it to Marcus without my consent. That wasn't a family decision, Dad. That was a legal violation of your fiduciary duty as a UTMA custodian. I chose not to sue you. That doesn't mean I forgot." Gerald's face drained. Not red anymore. White. The color of a man who has just learned that the person he dismissed understands exactly what he did, with the legal vocabulary to prove it. "How?" he started. "I had a lawyer explain it to me." The same lawyer Grandma Eleanor appointed to manage the trust she set up in my name, the one whose letters you intercepted. Dead silence. Diane's head snapped toward Gerald. What letters? She whispered. Gerald didn't answer. Marcus, who had been shrinking into his chair by the inch, leaned forward with his elbows on his knees. The charm was gone. In its place was something I recognized. Desperation. Tori, look, I'm in a tough spot, okay? I owe about 60 grand. Credit cards, mostly. If you could just lend me something, a bridge, just enough to... No. The word landed like a stone in water. No echo, no negotiation. Come on. His voice cracked. We're blood. Blood didn't stop you from taking my future, Marcus, and it won't make me fund yours. He looked at our father, the way he always did, for backup, for reinforcement, for the man who'd spent his whole life propping up the golden child. But Gerald was staring at the table, jaw clenched, still processing the phrase fiduciary duty and the ghost of letters he'd thrown in the trash. Then my mother broke. Not the way she used to break, the quiet kind, the kind where she cried at the sink and pretended the water was making her eyes red. This was different. This was a woman who was finally looking at the full cost of her silence. Tori. Her voice splintered. Please. I know I should have said something. I was standing right there. I saw what he did and I was scared. Your father, I didn't know how to... Mom. I said it gently. Not warm, not cold. The way you speak to someone who's telling you something you already know. I know you were scared, but you were the adult. I was 18. I needed one person in that house to stand up for me. Just one. And you chose silence. Diane pressed both hands over her mouth and sobbed, the kind of crying that comes from a place so deep it doesn't make sound at first. Gerald said nothing. Marcus said nothing. And in the quiet, I reached into the folder I'd brought with me, the one I kept in my desk, the one I hadn't opened in 3 years but never threw away. And I placed a single sheet of paper on the table in front of my father. The email. His email. Dated March 14th, 5 years ago. From Gerald J. Hilton to First Niagara Bank, requesting a full withdrawal and transfer of UTMA custodial funds, $175,000, from the account of Victoria E. Hilton to a new account in the name of Marcus G. Hilton. 4 sentences. No mention of my education. No mention of my future. Just an account number and an instruction. This is what you gave me, Dad, I said. A withdrawal form. Everything else, I gave myself. Gerald looked at the paper. His hand moved toward it, then stopped. He didn't pick it up. He didn't need to. He knew what it was. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see 3 of my designers glancing in, discreetly, the way you do when you hear something happening but don't want to be caught looking. Janet was at her desk, pretending to type, her eyes flicking toward the door every few seconds. 40 people on this floor, and not one of them knew the people sitting across from me. That was the point. My family had no power here, not in this building, not on this floor, not at this table. Gerald Hilton was not a man who yelled in public. He saved that for kitchens and closed doors. So he sat there, in a suit that didn't fit, in a building that wasn't his, staring at a piece of paper that proved what he'd done. And he said nothing, because for the first time in his life, there was nothing he could say. I stood up. Not fast, not dramatic. The way you stand when a meeting has reached its natural conclusion and everyone in the room knows it. I'm going to be honest with all 3 of you, I said. I don't hate you. Hating you would mean you still have power over how I feel. You don't. Gerald's eyes were on the table. Marcus was picking at the seam of his polo. Diane had stopped crying, but her breathing was ragged, and she held the tissue against her chest like a compress. I won't be lending Marcus money. I won't be pretending we're a happy family for the Petersons. And I won't be accepting a version of this story where Dad invested wisely, and I turned out fine. I let that settle. If there is ever going to be a relationship between us, it starts with 3 things. A genuine apology. Not the kind that starts with, I'm sorry you feel that way. Accountability for what was taken from me. Not redirected, not minimized, not explained away. And respect for the person I became without you. I picked up my legal pad and my pen. Until then, Janet will show you out. Gerald stood. His jaw worked, the way it does when a man has 100 things to say and knows that not one of them will help. He looked around, through the glass, past the rows of designers and project managers, at the logo on the far wall, at the skyline beyond the windows. He was measuring something, the distance between what he'd imagined for his family and what had actually happened. He didn't apologize. He buttoned his suit jacket, the middle button, wrong one, the way someone does when they're not thinking, and walked toward the door. Marcus followed, head down, hands back in his pockets. He didn't look at me. Diane was the last to stand. She moved slowly, holding the chair for balance. She looked at me, really looked, the way she hadn't since I was a child, and said very quietly, "Your grandmother would be proud." Something in my chest cracked, just a little, not enough to change anything, enough to feel. "I know," I said. Janet held the conference room door open. The sound of the studio flooded back in. Keyboards, a phone ringing, someone laughing over by the coffee station. The ordinary sound of a business running. My business. Gerald walked through the open-plan office with his shoulders pulled in, like a man trying to take up less space. The navy suit, too tight, too old, too small for the room, moved through rows of iMacs and standing desks and framed project photos, and not a single person looked up. Not because they were rude, because he was nobody here. The elevator chimed. The doors opened. They stepped in. Gerald first, then Marcus, then Diane, who turned at the last second and looked back down the hallway toward my office. I was already walking back to my desk. The doors closed. And for the first time in 5 years, I allowed myself to think the thought I'd been holding at arm's length since I was 18 years old. I won. Not because I was rich. Not because I had the bigger office or the better suit or the logo on the wall. I won because I was standing in a room I'd built with my own hands, and the people who had tried to decide my future had just walked out of it with nothing. After the elevator doors closed, I sat in the conference room for a long time. The email was still on the table. Gerald's 4 sentences dated 5 years ago, printed on plain white paper. I picked it up, folded it along the original crease, and slid it back into the manila folder. Let me tell you something I didn't say in that room. Something I'd only told Maggie and Richard Keene. I could have sued my father, I still can. Richard had the case built by the time I was 21. UTM. A breach of fiduciary duty. Gerald withdrew $175,000 from a custodial account designated for my benefit and redirected it to a third party, my brother, for purposes that had nothing to do with my education, my health care, or my welfare. Under Connecticut general statutes, that's not a gray area, it's black and white. A judge could have ordered full restitution plus interest, plus my legal fees. Richard had the withdrawal records, the bank correspondence, the email I'd just shown Gerald. He had the trust document from my grandmother proving that Gerald had also intercepted legal mail meant for me, a separate, provable offense. "You have a strong case," Richard told me when I was 22, sitting in his office with the folder open between us, "if you want to pursue it." I thought about it for 3 months. Then I told him no. Not because I'd forgiven my father, and not because the money didn't matter. It was 3 things, and I'll be honest about all of them. 1. Gerald was nearly broke. His retirement accounts were gutted, the house was refinanced, and Marcus had burned through everything. Winning a judgment against a man with no assets is just an expensive piece of paper. 2. I didn't want to spend the next 2 years of my life in courtrooms, reliving the worst day of my life in front of strangers. 3. And this is the one that mattered most. I didn't want to be the woman who built her life around $175,000. I wanted to be the woman who built her life without it. "Keep the file," I told Richard. "The statute of limitations runs 6 years. If he ever tries to rewrite this story publicly, I want receipts." Richard nodded. He understood. The folder went into my desk drawer, not as a weapon, as insurance. The $175,000 stopped being about money a long time ago. It became about who I was going to be, and I decided I was going to be someone who didn't need it. Saturday came faster than it had any right to. The Connecticut Convention Center was lit up like a cathedral, floor-to-ceiling windows, chandeliers the size of dining tables, 300 people in business formal filling a ballroom that smelled like lilies and ambition. The Hartford Business Journal had gone all out. Ice sculptures, a string quartet during cocktails, a media wall with the 30 under 30 logo where nominees posed for photographers. I'd bought a new blazer for the occasion, midnight blue, tailored, the nicest thing I'd ever owned. My grandmother's gold stud earrings, a pair of heels I'd practiced walking in for a week because I wasn't about to stumble on the one night that mattered. In the inside pocket of my blazer, a piece of paper, yellowed, soft at the folds, with a name and phone number written in a dead woman's handwriting. Richard Keene, Esquire. I'd carried it the way other people carry a lucky coin. Not because I believed in luck, because I believed in the woman who'd written it. Maggie was at the front table beaming. She'd brought 3 of our senior designers as guests. Janet had come too, in a dress I'd never seen her wear, proud as a mother hen. They called my name at 8:47 p.m., Tori Hilton, co-founder, Owens and Hilton Design Studio, Hartford Business Journal, 30 under 30. The walk to the stage felt longer than it was. The spotlight hit, and the room blurred into shapes and warmth and the sound of applause. I adjusted the microphone and looked out at 300 faces. Then I spoke. 5 years ago, I had $340 and a high school diploma. Someone I trusted told me I should learn a trade because I didn't have real potential. A murmur rippled through the room. He was wrong about the potential, but he was right about the trade. I learned the trade of building something from nothing, from blueprints and deadlines and clients who needed someone to see what they couldn't see yet. I paused, took a breath. I want to thank my partner, Maggie Owens, who didn't rescue me. She hired me. There's a difference. I want to thank my professors at Gateway Community College and the University of Hartford, who treated me like I belonged there before I believed it myself. My voice steadied. And I want to thank the woman who gave me my first investment, $12,000 in a sewing box, and taught me that your hands and your head are the only things nobody can repossess. My grandmother, Eleanor. Maggie was on her feet, then the table next to her, then the row behind them. A standing ovation that started at the front and moved through the room like a wave. I didn't cry on stage, I saved that for later. At a table near the back, someone was recording on their phone. It was Aunt Helen. She'd come. I'd sent her an invitation 3 weeks earlier, the only family member I'd reached out to. She was crying openly, not bothering to wipe her face, holding the phone steady with both hands. She sent the video to Diane that night. I didn't name my father. I didn't name Marcus. I didn't have to. Anyone who knew the story understood every word. And the people who didn't? They just heard a young woman who'd earned her place. That was enough. The letter arrived the following Thursday. No return address. Just my office address, handwritten on a plain white envelope, the way you write when you're not sure the person on the other end wants to hear from you. I recognized my mother's handwriting immediately. The looping T in Tori. The slight leftward slant she'd had since she was a girl. Something her own mother had tried to correct and eventually given up on. I opened it at my desk, after everyone else had gone home. Dear Tori, I watched the video Aunt Helen sent. I watched it 4 times. I'm writing this at the kitchen table. The same table. And I don't think I can sit here anymore without hearing what you said on that stage. I failed you. I need to say that clearly, because I've spent 5 years avoiding it. Your father made the decision, but I stood there and let it happen. I was scared. I've been scared for 26 years, scared of his voice, scared of being wrong, scared that if I spoke up the whole structure would collapse. So I said nothing while he took your money, your confidence, and your place in this family. And I told myself it was keeping the peace. It wasn't peace. It was cowardice. I know that now. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't think I've earned it. But I need you to know, I see what I did. I see who you've become, and I'm done standing by the sink with my mouth shut. I've contacted a divorce attorney. I'm looking for an apartment. For the first time in 30 years, I'm choosing myself. You taught me that, the night you walked out that door. I just wish it hadn't taken me 5 years to follow. Your grandmother would be proud of you. I know because I am. Mom. I set the letter down on the oak desk, next to the framed photo of Grandma Eleanor, and I cried. Not the kind of crying I'd done at Richard Keene's office. That had been grief for lost time, for money, for a father who'd never see me clearly. This was different. This was mourning the mother-daughter relationship we should have had. The version where she stood up at that table and said, "No, Gerald, this is wrong." The version where I didn't have to leave to learn my own worth. Gerald sent nothing. No letter, no call, no text, nothing. His ego was the last wall standing, and he would die behind it before he'd let it come down. Marcus sent a single text the night after the gala. 5 words. "Congrats on the award, Tori." No apology, no accountability, no acknowledgement of the $175,000, the threats, the years of silence. Just 5 words that cost him nothing and meant about the same. I read my mother's letter 3 more times. Then I placed it on my desk, next to the sewing box and the photo. The small, sacred collection of things that came from people who had, in their own way, believed in me. I didn't write back that night. I wasn't ready. But I didn't throw the letter away. That was new. Let me tell you where everyone ended up, because I think you deserve the full picture. Gerald Hilton took early retirement 6 months after our conference room meeting, though retirement is generous. His company downsized his department, and at 55, with a gutted 401k and a refinanced house, he didn't have the leverage to negotiate. He lives alone in the Glastonbury house now. The paint is peeling on the shutters he used to repaint every spring. The Petersons still live next door. Carol told Aunt Helen that Gerald doesn't come outside much anymore. When people ask him about me, and they do more often now, he changes the subject. He has never apologized. Marcus works at a car dealership in Middletown. Sales associate. He's 26 and lives in the house with Gerald. Or he did, until Gerald stopped speaking to him after the truth about the MBA came out. He never finished the degree. He never built the startup. He spent $175,000 of my future on a leased BMW, a Murray Hill apartment, and bottle service at clubs in Manhattan. The credit card debt is still at $60,000. He's on a payment plan. He has not apologized either, though Aunt Helen says he's quieter than he used to be, less sure of himself. Whether that's growth or just defeat, I can't say. My mother moved out in June. She rented a 1-bedroom apartment in Rocky Hill. Small, clean, hers. She got a full-time job at an accounting office and enrolled in a bookkeeping certificate program at Middlesex Community College. There's an irony there that I don't need to explain. Diane Hilton, at 53, is learning a trade. And for the first time in her life, she has a bank account with only her name on it. I think about that more than I expected to. As for me, I'm still at the 14th floor. The company is growing. We signed 2 new clients last month, a hotel group in Newport and a co-working campus in Stamford. Maggie and I are talking about opening a second office in New Haven, which would feel like a full-circle moment, given that's where I started with a bunk bed and a barista apron. The sewing box is still on my desk. The trust document is in my safe. The UTMA file is still in the drawer, untouched, and my mother's letter, folded once, tucked into its plain white envelope, sits on the corner of my desk where I can see it every morning. I haven't written back yet. But the letter is still there, and so am I. People ask me if I'm angry. I was. For about 2 years, anger was the engine that ran everything. It got me out of bed at 5 a.m. for the early shift at the coffee shop. It kept me at my desk until midnight, redoing a design that was already good enough, but needed to be undeniable. Anger is an excellent fuel, efficient, hot, available in unlimited supply when your family gives you a reason. But anger has a shelf life. If you let it run too long, it stops pushing you forward and starts eating you from the inside. Somewhere in year 3, maybe that night in the parking lot, maybe the morning Maggie offered me the job, the anger didn't disappear, but it changed shape. It turned into something quieter, steadier, less like a fire and more like a foundation. I don't tell this story for sympathy. I've built a good life, and I built it with my eyes open. I tell it because somewhere, right now, someone is sitting at a kitchen table being told they don't have potential. Someone's parent is signing away their future and calling it a smart investment. Someone's mother is staring at the floor, choosing silence over her own child. And the person at that table, the one being dismissed, is starting to believe it. Don't. My father took $175,000 from me. But the real theft wasn't the money. It was the years I spent wondering if he was right. That voice, maybe he was right. Maybe I'm not enough. Maybe the girl who draws pictures doesn't deserve a seat at the table. That was the thing I had to pay off. And the interest on self-doubt compounds faster than any bank account. I paid it off. Not with revenge, not with spite, with work, with proof, with the kind of silence that only comes from knowing your own worth. The best revenge isn't loud. It's the sound of a life well built, heard by the people who bet against you. I wrote the letter on a Tuesday night, not at the office, at home, my apartment in West Hartford. One bedroom, a small kitchen, a living room with a bookshelf I'd built myself from a kit and a fiddle-leaf fig that Maggie swore I'd kill within a month, but was somehow still alive 7 months later. Modest. Mine. Every square foot of it earned. I sat at the kitchen table, a different table, a table I'd chosen, with a sheet of white stationery and a pen, and I wrote to my mother. I didn't draft it, I didn't revise it, I just wrote. Mom, I got your letter. I've read it more times than I'll probably admit to you. I'm not ready to talk yet. I don't know when I will be. I won't lie to you about that, because I think we've both had enough of people saying what they don't mean in this family. But I want you to know this. The fact that you're starting over at 53, that you signed a lease, opened your own bank account, and enrolled in a program, that takes more courage than anything I've done. I built a company with $12,000 in spite. You're rebuilding a life after 30 years of silence. I don't know which one is harder. I think it might be yours. Grandma would be proud of you, too.
Tori, I folded the letter, slid it into an envelope, wrote the Rocky Hill address on the front, and stuck a stamp on the corner. I set it on the table by the front door, the spot where I leave my keys, my badge, the things I need to grab on my way out in the morning. I didn't write to my father, maybe one day. But today isn't that day, and I've learned not to force doors open for people who slammed them in my face. I didn't write to Marcus either. There's a difference between a door that's closed and a door that was never real. Marcus and I never had a relationship. We had an arrangement, and he was always the one holding the better cards. If he ever comes to me with an apology that doesn't start with a $sign, I'll listen. But I won't hold my breath. Forgiveness isn't a switch, it's a door. I'm not opening it yet. But for the first time in 5 years, I'm not boarding it shut either. So that's my story. A father who chose his son, a mother who chose silence, a brother who chose himself, and a daughter who chose to leave and then chose to build. I'm not going to stand here and tell you everything works out. It doesn't always. I got lucky in ways I can measure. A grandmother who planned ahead, a mentor who saw what my family refused to, a stubbornness I was probably born with. And I got unlucky in the way that counts most. I lost my family before I was old enough to understand what that would cost me. But if you're the one they counted out, the one they overlooked, underfunded, underestimated, dismissed, I'm not going to tell you it'll be easy. I'm not going to promise you a corner office or a crystal trophy or a conference room with a view. That's not the point. The point is this. The moment you stop waiting for them to see your worth and start building on it yourself, that's the moment everything shifts. Not the money, not the title, not the name on the wall, you. You're what changes. And once you do, nobody, not your father, not your brother, not the voice in your head that sounds like both of them, gets to take that from you. I'm 23 years old. I have a company, a partner I trust, a desk with a sewing box on it, and a letter I haven't mailed yet sitting by the door. Tomorrow morning, I'll pick up my keys, grab that envelope, and drop it in the mailbox on the corner of Farmington and South Main. Then I'll drive to work. If this story stayed with you, if you felt something, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe if you haven't already, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next one. I leave new stories in the description below. Go check them out after this, and if you have your own story about being counted out and coming back stronger, I want to hear it. Drop it in the comments. You never know who's reading right now, sitting at their own kitchen table needing exactly what you have to say. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next one.